Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to Recipe Redemption. I thought we could delve a little deeper into regional curiosities by trying some stuff from the American South. And by curiosities, obviously, I don't mean famous regional dishes like low country shrimp and grits from the Carolinas, or Cajun or Louisiana Bayou classics like gumbo or jambalaya or shrimp etouffee or hush puppies or Texas barbecue. I'm talking about lesser known dishes and treats that you find throughout the South that might raise an eyebrow or two of us Northerners who are not steeped in the culture of the South. I've already tried a couple of delicacies on this list in previous videos, and I'll include links to my head cheese video here, and peanut butter and mayonnaise sandwiches are part of this video here. Since I obviously don't live in the South, there are a few items I might have difficulty acquiring here in the Pacific Northwest, so I may end up having to make them myself if I can't order them off the internet. As a result, you're going to see the wardrobe change as I just recorded short clips for each item as I received or made them. And as it turns out, hair and beard length is going to change too, since recording these clips took way longer than I anticipated when I first conceived of this video. I'll also jump in from time to time with additional commentary that future me has gained over the 4 years that it took to assemble these clips. Did I mention I'm kind of crap at this? I feel like I may have mentioned it over at some point. I feel like I should say something about soul food, since that's a subset of Southern cuisine that really deserves its own episode if I do an episode at all. Southern food, and soul food in particular, is heavily influenced by flavors and techniques from Central and West Africa. And when adapted to regionally available ingredients and combined with European cooking techniques, became something uniquely American. However, a lot of what we think about as strictly Southern cuisine tends to lean heavily toward the Caucasian experience, for better or worse. Although many are descended from humbler dishes developed during leaner times in history, when you trace their origins back, there is a distinct separation between the ingredients that were available to white townfolk and plantation owners and what was provided to or foraged by the slave populations of the rural South. And as with so many dishes I've either cooked or talked about on this channel, the things you grow up eating become the things you continue eating as an adult because they're part of your personal heritage, even when better foods become available later as a function of your community as a whole becoming more well off or, not enslaved. So, in the same region of the country, because there was this boundary line between the dishes cooked by Southern whites and blacks, two separate cuisines arose over time, with inevitable cross pollination between the two and similarities due to their shared heritage, but yet kept distinct by cultural and personal preferences. So things like fried chicken, stewed collard greens or other greens, black eyed peas, cornbread. Those are all Southern foods, but since they belong in the soul food subset, I'm not including them here because there's just too much to cover and this video would be an hour long or more. That, and since what we know as soul food just isn't that weird, with the exception perhaps of chitlins or chitterlings. I'm not sure that soul food belongs on this channel. Am I really so presumptuous to think that Southern fried chicken needs to be redeemed? I'm not sure that you could take the fried chicken that you believe to be the best, and I'm not getting in the middle of that argument, and then I step in and say I can improve it, you would be fully justified to slap me so hard my descendants would feel it. Nope. I'm sticking with the weird stuff you find at a Mississippi gas station. And first on that list,
one being the coolicle. This is a dill pickle, or a dill pickle wedge, that has been soaked in cherry Kool-Aid. This is a thing. They actually sell these in stores in the South. You go to some small town general store, and there will be a jar of these for you to purchase individually or the whole jar. Usually by the cash register, right next to the pickled eggs and the pickled pig's feet. And I know you're thinking, the what? Don't you worry, we'll get to those too. But first, the coolicle. This is really a thing, and it's a dill pickle. Usually, it's the pickle brine is preserved. They still retain the brine, and they just mix sugar and cherry Kool-Aid with the pickle brine, and then it's soaked for at least a week before it's ready for sale. That is deeply weird. The dill pickle, because there's still the brine, you haven't rinsed any of that out, so it's still briny. It's salty, it's vinegary, but then you have the cherry Kool-Aid, the sweetness and the artificial fruitiness of the Kool-Aid really punches you along with that vinegar, and it really lasts. The flavor really sticks with you. I'm not really a fan, but it's a thing. And mind you, as a caveat for the rest of this particular video, all these things I'm going to try, I'm free to not like them. You're free to like them if you do. It's not any sort of disparagement against some of these sort of deeply cultural delicacies. It's just not my thing. So, let's see what's next. Another specialty of the Southern Kitchen: pickled watermelon rind. Now, as with any pickle, this is a form of preservation. This is meant as sort of a side condiment to things, not a, actual meal, but watermelon rind. It's a firm texture. So there's, corn syrup and sugar, vinegar, and it just says salt and spices. There's a ginger and sort of an allspice flavor to this one. It's quite good, and it's a clever way of using a part of the watermelon that most people just throw away. So it's a nod to the frugality of the classic Southern kitchen. Waste nothing, preserve everything that you can for the lean months. That's actually quite good. Make a steady diet of it? Probably not, but it's actually pretty good. Let's try something else. Next, ambrosia salad. It's a staple of picnics and potlucks throughout the South for probably about the past 50 or 60 years. Here's how it's made.
Ambrosia is actually pretty simple when you come right down to it. Taking some whipping cream, whipping it to about the soft peaks stage, and then incorporate about an equal amount of sour cream into it, and you don't have to take it to stiff peaks stage, but close enough. Into this, I fold a cup of marshmallows, can of fruit cocktail, drained, about a cup's worth of grated coconut, dried coconut flake, and about a half a cup, or about a half a can of these mandarin orange slices, drained. Oh, and also about a quarter cup of chopped pecans. Then just carefully fold all this together. You don't want to release all that air. You don't want to break up that whipping cream. So you want to still be light and fluffy. So just fold in carefully until well combined. Chill until ready for service. And then enjoy.
And here's how it tastes. It's really sweet. Having lived in Seattle all my life, I have not been treated to this particular taste sensation. It's not bad. The oranges give it a nice citrus kick. The pineapple and the cherry, and to a lesser extent the coconut, add to the sort of fruitiness and tropicalness of the mixture. But pretty much everything except the nuts adds sugar to the party. So this is a very, very sweet dish. Ooh, maraschino cherry. It's not bad. I personally have a thing about overly sweet dishes that are not desserts. And so something this sweet, calling it a salad seems it's a bit of a stretch. By definition, what is a salad? Here's where schools of thought depart from one another. According to Merriam-Webster, a salad is any of various, usually cold dishes, such as A, raw greens, such as lettuce, often combined with other vegetables and toppings, and served especially with dressing. Or B, small pieces of food, such as pasta, meat, fruit, or vegetables, usually mixed with a dressing, such as mayonnaise, or set in gelatin. So, pasta salad or antipasta salad. Okay, yeah. Potato salad. Is it a salad? Technically, by definition, yes. This is so sweet. Is this a salad? Jury's out. The sour cream helps. It gives it a little bit more of a tang where otherwise it'd just be treacly sweet. But still, to my taste, it's too sweet. I think there are a number of southern dishes that are just overly sweetened for my tastes, like sweet tea. When I was living in South Carolina, when I first got there, and I said, "Oh yeah, I'll have some sweet tea with lunch," and it nearly put me in a diabetic coma. They put so much sugar into their sweet tea, and I like a little bit, just to take a little bit of the bite out of the tannins of the tea, particularly if you're using kind of a really strong, aggressive black tea. But beyond a certain amount of sweetness, it gets to be almost syrupy. It's the way that some people like it down there. I'm not a fan. Next item of southern food is a convenience store and gas station favorite. Had to actually see it in the container. Pickled eggs. Uh, don't really see these a whole lot around here in the Northwest. I don't recall actually seeing them at all. But when I was living in South Carolina and in Florida, you see these in convenience stores, just a big jar, sort of ominously floating spheroids. Obviously, a method to preserve hard cooked eggs for times when you didn't have refrigeration. Um, that just became sort of a favorite snack. People will actually buy whole gallon jars of these. Um, this has been my own little recipe. I did not want to buy a gallon jar of these. Um, so I just hard cooked an egg, peeled it, and dunked it in a solution with vinegar, some salt, and some herbs and spices. At this point, I don't even remember what herbs and spices I put into it. Um, I think there's some thyme and like some fennel seed. I don't know. I don't know. But and it's been sitting in the fridge for about 2 weeks. So pickled eggs. Mm. Vinegary. The Now it's kind of like brining the egg. Some of the flavor has actually penetrated. Yeah, I'm not going to bother trying. Well, maybe you can see. There's a little bit of a layer, almost like the smoke ring on barbecue, where the vinegar and the sort of color and flavoring that sort of leached out of the herbs has penetrated 1/16 of an inch into the surface of the egg. So there's definitely vinegariness, obviously, but the flavor of the herbs is actually penetrated into the egg. Honestly, mm, I really love eggs. So this is not as bad as I was expecting. I was honestly expecting this to be super vinegary and that's pretty much it, but there's actually a complexity of flavor. Now, I don't know if the typical pickled eggs that you get at a southern gas station or convenience store um, actually has this complexity of flavor, or if it's just straight white vinegar and it is purely preserved eggs, or if there is more of a pickle, I guess, to it that actually imparts more flavor besides just vinegar. But I actually would happily have more of those. Mm. I may actually have to try and see um, about making a bigger jar with, like, say, a dozen eggs and just have those around because that's actually delicious. Hmm. Okay, next. Next on our culinary tour of the South, pickled pig's feet. Oh, this is happening. This is just packed in vinegar. So they've taken pig's feet, boiled them, or probably braised them, um, and that obviously it cooks the meat, but also it allows the collagen to gelatinize, and so it becomes very, very jiggly. I know they don't really serve these, consume these with chopsticks in the South, but I'm me. So in here, you've probably got about uh, a full pig's foot. I mean, this jar is about the size of a pig's foot. Um, some of the meat has actually been cut off of the bone. The bones are actually still in here, however. But, so actually, let me see if I can get a piece of. Yeah, yeah, this one's got. So this one's got a little bit of knuckle in there, some meat, some fat, some collagen. It's all packed in vinegar, and obviously these are vacuum sealed and everything, so that also helps in the preservation. But back in the day, they didn't have that either. It was just the vinegar that was really preserving this. So let's try. unsurprisingly, very vinegary. Um, because it was braised, as I said, all of that connective tissue, all that collagen has been converted to gelatin. So it has a very gelatinous texture to it. Um, the cooking process loosened up the layers, so there's that layer of skin that has been, really tenderized by cooking and then packing in vinegar. Um, the layer of fat underneath it is really gelatinous. The little bit of meat that's on here, sorry, the vinegar is really making me salivate. Um, the little bit of meat on there, um, actually tender because it's cooked, but then it gets a little bit firmer actually uh, in the vinegar, I find. And then you kind of got to pick around because there are the bones and some of the connective tissue, the cartilage that is not really affected by either the cooking or the vinegar. It still stays kind of crunchy. Um, so you could choose to crunch through that, or you could just pick through it like the bones. Um, I've had pig's feet in various forms before, so this isn't horrifying to me. It's not my favorite thing just because of all the vinegar. But again, that was the method you had for preserving this back in the day. And like a lot of things, once you, as a culture, get used to things being a certain way, that's just the way that you have them. So they continue packing these in vinegar, even though they have fridges now. They don't have to do it this way, but now it's a part of the culture and they like it. So there you are. The next thing we're going to try is a Kentucky favorite specifically. It's found throughout the South, but it's really a Kentucky specialty, and it's burgoo. Now, burgoo is basically a what you got stew. It originated during a time when meat was scarce, and food in general was scarce, and so as sort of a celebration of bounty, of the harvest and whatnot, eventually they came up with this sort of what you got stew that they called burgoo, and there are a number of theories as to where the name came from, but essentially it's a stew made from at least three different types of meat, along with potatoes, corn, other vegetables, all sort of thrown together into a stew. The original, or at least the recipes that I've seen, have things like venison and squirrel and pretty much whatever meat you could get a hold of. And the usually, even though they were hunting, they had cattle, so there was usually beef in there. Now, I'm not going to do that, one, because I'm fresh out of squirrel, but also just for practicality, I'm sticking with beef, pork, and chicken. That's what I'm going to do. But this is basically how it's made. For this burgoo recipe, I have pork shoulder and beef chuck. How much? I don't really know. It doesn't really matter because it's burgoo. And I recorded this almost 4 years ago, so I really don't remember. But in any case, they're cut into bite-sized pieces, cooked off in batches to make sure you don't overload the pan until the pieces are browned. They don't have to be cooked all the way through because they are going to stew later. And just dump them into a stock pot. Next into the pan, chicken legs. These are just going to be browned off, and then again they're going to finish cooking the rest of the way in the stew. So it doesn't matter that they don't have to be cooked all the way through here. I'm just going to get some good color, and I want to develop some fond in the bottom of this pan, which is going to give me a lot more flavor later when I deglaze. Remember that technique? Next for the veg, the usual suspects. I have onion here, celery, carrot, and green pepper.
Other recipes include things like okra, green beans. Pretty much, this is a what you got stew, so whatever. Um, and while those are sauteing, I'm going to get the rest of my stock pot filled up. I have about a quart of beef stock there, and this is actually homemade chicken stock that I had around, and about a quart of that. Along with a couple cans of diced tomatoes. Stirred together, brought to a simmer. And once all the veggies are sauteed off, they get added to the pot as well. Now, about that fond, taking some white wine. Here's the delightful benefit of mounting my camera directly over the cooktop. And just heat and scrape to get all that goodness into the wine. Also into my stock pot, a couple of potatoes cut into bite-sized pieces. These are just going to cook in the stew as it simmers, along with some frozen black-eyed peas and some frozen corn. Simply seasoned with salt and pepper to taste, and the last flavor ingredient is about a quarter cup of Worcestershire sauce. Yes, that's a lot of Worcestershire sauce, but it's also a big pot, so not to worry. As you can see, burgoo has a lot of ingredients. You typically make this for an occasion, and when you cook this, you don't mess around. Make enough for leftovers, or make enough for a crowd at least. A particularly grand burgoo party, written up in the New York Times in 1897, included 400 pounds of beef, 6 dozen chickens, 4 dozen rabbits, 30 cans of tomatoes, 20 dozen cans of corn, 15 bushels of potatoes, and 5 bushels of onions. That's a party. And here you have it. See how much I can tilt this without pouring it on the table. Burgoo. So it's, if you noticed during the cooking process, no real thickeners were added. I've seen some recipes that utilize okra, and so that would help thicken it a little bit, kind of like gumbo, but it doesn't do a whole lot of thickening to my mind anyway. So this is very soupy. But let's get a bit of the meat here. So it's stewed long enough that a lot of the meat just falls apart, even after, obviously the chicken thighs that I used, I pulled the meat off of the bone, but it's not bad. I was a little concerned with the amount of Worcestershire that you add to this, that it was basically going to be condiment soup. But it's very distinct. You can definitely taste the Worcestershire in it, but it's not overpowering, which is kind of surprising. I do like the corn and the black-eyed peas that are in here. For such a watery stew, it is surprisingly robust. Because there is nothing to sort of emulsify anything, it is a little bit greasy. There's definitely it leaves a sort of an oily feeling on your lips when you eat it, which is not necessarily bad, but it's something you sort of notice, like, there's a good bit of fat in this. Now here in Kentucky, around Derby time, there are some folks who actually have a burgoo party to celebrate Derby time, where they make a big pot of burgoo and actually have everyone in the community come over. I think it's a great idea. And I can see how this can become a sort of regional favorite, because it's quite tasty. Now, mind you, this is very, very distinct from the burgoo that you might see mentioned in maritime records.
there is a sort of basically an oatmeal gruel that is also called burgoo that's served as sort of a dietary staple on sailing ships of the 18th and 19th centuries, particularly on pirate ships. That's very distinct from this, and yet not, because what ends up happening is your burgoo, that's made as sort of the filler, is augmented with hunks of salt pork, whatever dried vegetables you have, and that sort of thing. So it ends up kind of being like this, but the burgoo itself is just the oatmeal gruel, and is not the completed stew like this. Mm, it's really quite delightful.
And that, dear friends, is our brief dip into Southern delicacies. Obviously, not a comprehensive list. Um, there are any number of gelatin salads that are still popular in the South for whatever reason. Didn't get into things like red eye gravy, which is basically pork drippings and coffee thickened up. Didn't get to that. So, are there other Southern specialties that we should take a look at in future videos? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, like, subscribe, share, and comment. And I'll see you next time here on Recipe Redemption. Thanks for watching.